Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sunday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, going to take you through Saturday's SEC games around regionals. Get you ready for Sunday. We got a round of elimination games followed by regional finals this evening. We will punch some tickets to super regionals today. It's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun and probably chaos if yesterday's results were any indication. Before I get to anything specific, though, I have to remind you that this episode of Weekend Waypoints is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The sun's out and the fun is on at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Score a cool pool, savor summer with a grill, prep for fishing weekends, or mount up with a new mountain bike. However you have fun, you can't lose with our top brands. Gear up online at academy.com or at your local store. All right, let's get into it. Got some comments waiting. We'll jump into those real quick before we get to going through the games. Caleb Falk, first one in. Talk about a performance last night, Joe. LSU's given up 0 runs in the tournament with Cowan, Evans, and Shore still available. Yeah, they've really just kind of really just kind of have taken control of that regional in a way that we thought was possible. We talked about that one being a little bit of a softer draw, but still you have to win the games, and LSU has done that handily. 12-0 last night. Kate Anderson really good on the mound. Offense was good from the start, and now you're in a good spot if you're LSU, where you can throw a bunch of guys, Cowens, Evans, and Shores at whoever comes out of the Little Rock DBU elimination game earlier today, and you're gonna feel like you're in a pretty good spot. Daniel Ordwine says, great morning, Tiger fans. Never felt better about making it out of a regional. Yeah, good stuff there. Moonshine says, same old Corbin after Vandy loses a game. Mr. Mr. Asshole to media. He was not in a particularly good mood there. I think it comes off as childish. It does. Reporters just doing their jobs, and I think specifically Aria Gerson there at the Tennessean just asking questions that need to be asked, and he doesn't take them well all the time. That's his right, but the reporters, whoever it is, are just doing a job. And when you lose games, you have to answer questions about why it happened. That's kind of how that works. So yeah, it's not a great look, but he does have a tendency to take losses really hard, and to take it out on whoever's asking him the questions that have to be asked. Starter 179 says SEC overrated again. Shocking. 0-5 versus the ACC. Well, it could just be that they went 0 for 5 at the ACC. That kind of stuff happens. Like, that's just baseball. But yeah, a great day for the ACC, certainly. And they're a league that's obviously very strong as well. This is an SEC show, but it's not an unreasonable SEC show here. Certainly not waving the flag for the league necessarily, but yeah, it was a great day for the ACC. And some fun games in there. I mean, we'll talk about plenty of them as we go through the results here. Ace Man gives us a meep. A lot of A&M guys like Ace Man riding the UTSA bandwagon these days. Man, that game was fun. That game was stressful to watch. The game I was covering at Auburn was wrapping up right around the same time, so I didn't get to see the very ending of it because we were in a post-game press conference, but went back and watched it, and that team fights, man. Like that team really, really fights, and I knew they would play well this weekend and make a push. But you never know whether it's going to be, whether it's going to be enough when you're taking on a team like Texas has been so good this year. Thank you, Moonshine, for the compliment on my shirt. I got some flowers. There's some fish on here too somewhere. And I don't know if you can see him. There's a little fish guy right there. Do you think Peterson will pitch for Florida tomorrow if they make it? And what percentage would you give them to win today? Well, let's see. They've got. I'm just looking at my. Looking at the bracket stuff here. Hang on one second. Make sure I have it right, because I don't think I wrote this down correctly. Hold, please. Yeah, so it's East Carolina. I thought that's what it was, but I wanted to make sure I was right. I think they've got a good chance to win today. I think East Carolina had to burn a lot, had to fire a lot of its bullets, bullpen wise. I know Ethan Young threw quite a bit, so I actually give Florida a decent chance to win that game, especially because yesterday that win over Fairfield maybe is one of those deals where that gets the offense kind of rolling with the old hitting is contagious thing, and maybe that carries today. And then if you can put some runs up against Coastal in the regional final, like maybe you can make that uncomfortable for the Chanticleers. And then if you get to Monday, of course, anything can happen. You might see Peterson, but Kevin O'Sullivan tends to be one of the more conservative coaches in terms of using his pitchers and bringing pitchers back in regionals and things like that. So he's, to me, I would say it's, kind of a coin flip, but I kind of lean no, unless we need 3 outs right here, that kind of situation to close out a game, because it's just not something that Florida does a ton of compared to many others. Brant Roban says LSU coming into form at the right time, Jay doing Jay things. Also, did you see what we talked about the Corbin stuff. Yeah, and that's a good point. They're lucky to have won game 1. Yeah, they very easily could be eliminated right now, although I guess they would not have played Louisville last night had they not won that game, or had they not won that game. Just not, like I said just a minute ago, not a good look. Like, reporters just doing their jobs, and end up being part of a story they didn't ask for. All right, here we go. Scrolling. Gigambard, another one. How about my Roadrunners? Meep, indeed. Brandon Willis with a Woo Pig Suey. That's another team that's just kind of cruising through the bracket so far. Big win over Creighton last night. Scrolling through. Jeremy Scott with his Roll Tide as usual. Tough loss. We will see what changes are made in the offseason. If any, it's a tough deal, because it's just tough because the expectations are so high in this league, right? Where just getting to a regional isn't enough anymore. Necessarily taking a side on that, I'd have to really give that a think about how I feel, to really gauge how I feel about that. But the reality is the reality that pretty much across the board in the SEC, unless you're, if Missouri were to make a regional and go 0-2, I mean, okay, great, but they made a regional, right? But for the most part, like 0-2 in a regional is not good enough. Like, just getting to the postseason isn't really good enough anymore in the league. And so, I do wonder what we'll see if any change at Alabama. But on the flip side, it's a third straight regional appearance for Alabama, and not too different from Kentucky. They've had higher highs in the past than Kentucky's had, but not too different in that, Mitch Gaspard had a run where they were in regionals there for 4 or 5 consecutive years, or 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 or whatever it was. But since then, it's not really been a lot of consistent postseason appearances. So on the other hand, that's kind of tough. Like, they're more consistent now than they've been in a long time, but going winless in a regional is not really what you're looking for. Caleb Falk says, I don't know how Jay does it in regionals, picking up transfers already. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, I saw Braden Simpson. I want to make sure I had his name right, from High Point. I've actually seen him a decent bit because, High Point's not too far from where I live. And so I just will periodically go out there and see them. And he's a good player. Like, he's power hitting infielder, third base, second base type guy. Could maybe play shortstop in a pinch, although he didn't play shortstop really at High Point. So, taking a step up to be a shortstop in the SEC, I don't know about that, but certainly the bat is going to play. Like, the guy can really, really hit. So it's a good pickup there. Brandon Willis, how about the Aloha Hogs? Yeah, Bash brother. Vahivo Lloyd, 2 home runs yesterday. Sean Miller says LSU should roll to Omaha, but hard to say whether they're really clicking given the weak teams in their regional. It is funny enough that this got mentioned on one of the broadcasts, and look, it is what it is. Like, LSU didn't apologize to anybody, and they're not the only team that benefits from this, but they do sometimes end up with some weaker 4 seeds. And so that's just geography, right? Because you end up, you oftentimes end up with a SWAC team, or a Southland team that's overmatched, like things like that. So, yeah, so the geography sometimes can play a role there, but yeah, I mean, we knew Rhode Island was also a softer 3, and that's a big part of it. And I think DBU has a lot of name value in college baseball, but this isn't like a classic DBU team. I don't think. I mean, they're good, clearly, but I don't think it's like a vintage DBU. It says recipe for versus UGA is throw a reasonably competent lefty. Coggin is supposed to be a great hitting coach, but we haven't seen it this year. Just frustrating. Yeah, the inconsistency, I totally get it. Like, because that's the thing is yes, generally at home Georgia swung the bat pretty well this year, but it's not just that simple home and road. There's just a little bit of, even at home, a little bit of inconsistency from day to day that I get is frustrating. And Kyle Johnson is a talented guy, pitched well, but it's a guy who's had a pretty tough season. And maybe it just means that Duke has him in a good spot right now. That could be true too. Certainly, I'm not watching it as closely as our folks at ACC Extra, Bradley Smart and Aaron Fitt, but maybe he's just in a really good spot right now, and he pitched the best game he's pitched all year. But also, it could just be a matchup thing. But Georgia's going to have to hit its way out today. That's for sure. Like, that's just the reality of where they're at right now. Carl Dunn says, good morning. The best team after 8 p.m. plays for the regional championship. That's funny. Yeah, they are. Like, you do not want to face LSU after a certain hour. They are it's like vampires in that way. They're best when the sun's been down for a little bit. DC says, finally someone doing some podcast content this weekend. Much appreciated. Sure thing, DC. Happy to do it. We'll also be doing it for Super Regional weekends and College World Series weekends. Daniel Ordwine says, Vandy, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida, Kentucky. Those are, by the way, all teams that are sitting at 1-1. History tells us only 1 or 2 will make it out of the regional. Who would you think makes it? Because of the pitching depth, I like Vanderbilt. I just think they're one of the few teams that really has the pitching depth to truly fight its way out. So that's one. And then the others, and that's also a little bit of a, they were the 1 seed, so I guess it's kind of easy to predict that there. And then give me, I mean, if I had to stop there, I might stop there, because with Texas, I just don't know if they're going to have the arms to get it done, because UTSA is going to be ready to hit. Like, UTSA could roll out of bed and get a dozen hits. So that makes me nervous. With Georgia, it's like what we just talked about. Can the offense remain consistent for now? They're going to have to win 3 straight games. Is the offense going to be consistent enough for that? I have questions about Ole Miss, especially since they're going to have to go through Georgia Tech this afternoon. Do they have enough pitching to against a good Georgia Tech lineup? A Georgia Tech lineup that, yes, they lost. They scored 11 runs yesterday. Scored 9 the day before. So is there enough pitching there? Same question with Florida. Actually, I would have, if Florida just had like a little bit more, like on the, like a couple more healthy pitchers they trusted, or what, like I might feel decent about that one, because at some point Coastal Carolina's pitching is very good, but at some point the SEC depth plays a role. And so if they can just get that to Monday, like suddenly it becomes like a real scrap between those two teams, because they're both going to be so taxed on the mound. And I'm just going to assume that Florida's 10th guy on the mound is going to be more talented than Coastal's even 7th or 8th guy, right? And so we've seen that before with SEC teams that have gotten things to Monday, and then you just kind of see the discrepancy in the depth. And so that feels like Florida's best chance there. And with Kentucky, I just don't see it. I think West Virginia and Clemson are just both too good. like to beat those two teams 3 more times just seems unlikely. So give me Vanderbilt and then like a long shot for Florida, but not dead. Marquez says bring back Jim Wells. Yeah, sure thing. By the way, like the Jim Wells coaching tree, really impressive stuff. Like if you're just like, putzing around on the internet, like go look at the history of head coaches at Northwestern State in Natchitoches. I mean, I'm going to miss somebody, but like John Cohen, Dave Van Horn, Jim Wells, Mitch Gaspard. I feel like there's some, but like just it's been impressive. Like the coaches. I mean, you can even like Lane Burroughs has gone on to coach there, went on to La Tech and has made regionals, and Bobby Barbier made a regional or was close to making a regional with Southeastern this year. We'll see what those guys' careers have moving forward. But anyway, interesting. Average combined score in the early games today, asked Sean. I set the over-under 18.5 runs per game, tiny parks and limited pitching. May turn into slow pitch softball scores today. Yeah, this is the Sunday elimination round is the session where I tell people, like, look, if your team is if your team is waiting in a regional final, or if you don't have a dog in the hunt, like I'm all for, and I used to do this before I did this for a job. I was a fan, and I would be locked in to squeeze play on Sunday, the elimination games. And then I just found that it became a slog because let's be honest, like some of these matchups, you've got teams like, no disrespect, but like North Dakota State playing in these early elimination games. And I could be wrong because I don't know that much about their team, but I have to imagine they're on fumes on the mound. And so those games can kind of get a little bit out of hand. And Little Rock, same thing. I mean, they gave up 10 runs to Rhode Island yesterday. And they got to go play a game again today. So that window is what I recommend. Like, like go pick up lunch somewhere, go to lunch, get some fresh air, like still check in. I'm not saying check out, but unless you have a team playing in that early window, like that's an opportunity to just kind of like look at some results, move your body a little bit. That's my advice. Because some of those games do get really ugly. The average combined score, 18.5 runs. So we're looking at basically a 10-9 game to get the over. I'll go over because I do think we're going to have some 20+ runs in those early games. So I'll go over, but I think that's a good line. Sean asks, any chance the NCAA ever ditches the 400-mile rule and moves to a pure snake seeding? It would be much more fair and entertaining overall. I would love it. First of all, I'm for it because I just think like UTSA, like let's use that example. Like UTSA having to go to Austin hurts both Texas and UTSA because like for Texas, you're like, oh great, you're going to send this really good team that's from 90 minutes away or what have you, who's already beaten us to our place. Okay, great. What a reward for being the number 2 overall seed. And then from UTSA's standpoint, it's like, well, wait a minute, we've already beaten this team, and you're going to make us go do it again to advance in the postseason. And if it were a true like S curve, as they would say, UTSA would probably be the 2 seed at, the number 13, 12, 13, 14 host as opposed to the 2. So I want it. I would like at least snake the 2 seeds, right? Like once we get to auto bids and you have to send teams from the Northeast somewhere, like then we can maybe worry about geography a little bit more. But as for competitive reasons, I would love to see 1 through 32 seeded so that, theoretically the 1 seed is getting the weakest 2. And then, all the way through to where the 16 seed is getting the best 2 seed. As far as whether it'll happen, I don't think it's imminent because I think you'd need to these bureaucratic processes take forever, but then B, you'd have to have a lot of examples of you'd have to have a lot of aggrieved parties coming forward to make that change, and I just don't know that it's a big enough issue that anybody's really going to saber rattle for it. I mean, that's the thing is like stuff like that tends to only change when there's like a groundswell of saber rattling from people and not folks like you and I. but coaches and administrators and things like that. I just don't know that enough people see it as a problem, I guess is how I would put it. Mark S. is accusing me of drinking Mountain Dew from a coffee cup. That is not true. Frankly, if it was, it would taste better. This is not great hotel coffee. It was kind of at the bottom of the, when you're like at a hotel and it's like the pump on the top to get the coffee out, and you're having to kind of work it pretty good. That's usually a sign that you're at the bottom of it, and it tastes like it. When does Patrick Hallmark get a bigger job? If he wants it, and I assume he does, because these coaches tend to be ambitious. Sooner rather than later, one of the obvious jobs that he was associated with was Rice, but two things there. Because of the timing of Rice letting Jose Cruz Jr. go and David Pierce just being available, that job never really opened up. And then second, with as much of a rebuild as Rice is right now, UTSA, at least in the near term, is a better place to be. You're in the same league. Obviously UTSA is winning now in a way that Rice isn't. So, but yeah, certainly any jobs in Texas that are a next step up, I would certainly have Patrick Hallmark on my list. If moving forward, if Houston opened up, Todd Whitting's coming back for next year. That's already been confirmed. But if he's out after next year, he's coaching on the last year of his contract next year is Whitting. Like, if I'm Houston, like that's my first phone call probably. So I think sooner rather than later, but just because of the way the dominoes have worked this year in the carousel, like I don't know if there's going to be an obvious landing spot for him this offseason. So it kind of seems to me, if you maybe bet now, that he's going to be back in San Antonio next season and have an opportunity to build on what they're doing now. Brant Robin brings up a good point about LSU. Tigers have not even burned Cowan or Evans. What a luxury to have two aces. And that's the point I always go back to with them is, if LSU was going to get pushed, it was probably going to be this weekend, because you're going to have to use a third starting pitcher. And while I like LSU's options more than I like most other teams' third options, that does open up a little bit of volatility. But in the supers, you just got to win 2 games. LSU's in good shape for that. And then in the CWS, you probably will need a third guy at some point. But with the days off being the way they are, if you stay on the good side of the bracket, like you really don't need the third guy much. Like you can really get away with basically having 2 guys, and that'll get you most of the way to a national title. So that's a great point. I think they're in really good shape because of that. Jordan Shields has a bad day to be a Bearcat or a Demon. If nothing else, because it'll be a very long day for both of those teams. And boy, that Wake Forest Miami Ohio game was ugly. Not a lot of strike throwing from Wake Forest. I think Tennessee's in really good shape. I think Tennessee finishes the job tonight. But of those 2 teams, I think Cincinnati is the one that would give them the better game, just because I don't trust Wake Forest to throw enough strikes to make that game competitive. I mean, on day 2 of a regional, they were struggling to throw strikes against the 4 seed. And that's a problem, obviously. All right. Caleb mentions Jacob Myers. Yeah, Jacob Myers threw well. Like, he's coming on. Surprise, surprise, LSU has some pitchers who are rounding into form at the right time of year. Joey says, Marcus Phillips showing his adjustments and handling runners are sticking. He's peaking at the right time. Agreed. Yuck. That was yuck to the coffee, not Marcus Phillips, because Marcus Phillips has done a great job. And I said that kind of tentatively. I think it was yesterday's show, maybe it was Friday's show. I don't know. That he's been doing a better job. But it's like, okay, but we'll see against a team that like really wants to run. And the running game just wasn't a big factor for Cincinnati yesterday. I thought he did a really nice job. And look, here's the deal too. Even when it was a real problem for him, you can't steal first base. And when he's on, getting to first base is a problem for other teams too. So he was always going to be okay. But now that he's holding runners, I think he's in really good shape. Starter asked, what Big 12 teams do you like to make Omaha? We're in the postseason. I'll allow it. This is an SEC-centric show, but let's talk bigger picture stuff. So I wouldn't say Cincinnati, just because they're in I just have a hard time seeing them coming through the losers bracket today. Same with K-State. Give me Arizona. I feel like they're in really good shape, especially now that Oregon is out of that regional. Let me just double check and make sure that region I have the teams right. Yeah, they're because there's no SEC team in that regional. That's one that I haven't been watching as closely. But now that they're sitting in a good spot and they didn't get pushed yesterday, really, to Arizona. I like them. Certainly. Now they're gonna get matched up with. If they come through, they're most likely going to get matched up with North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and I'm not really sure anybody's beaten North Carolina in Chapel Hill. But once you get into a super regional, you're just 2 wins away. So Arizona or West Virginia would be my choices. West Virginia is 2-0 there. They beat Clemson, but they have kind of a similar issue where if they win that, they're going to get matched up with LSU, and we just talked about how dangerous LSU is going to be there. So I think the teams that are in the best shape right now have really tough super regional draws, and that makes it tough to see. But look, the when you get to a super regional, pretty much anything can happen. Nicholas Wilson said, I agree with you on Vandy. We were talking about Vandy coming back through the losers bracket to win. I would agree with you on Vandy if they didn't throw their third starter last night. Feels like that was a bit of a calculated risk that backfired. Yeah, although I will say, so yes, like I'm not just disagreeing with you. I mean, yes, that does make them one more starter short, but that is also something that they've been doing with him. Like they've been piggybacking him, Connor Fennell, lately with Bowker. So I think that's just a thing they like doing. They do still have Austin Nye, who pitched well at the SEC tournament, and it's real stuff. So they do still have one, kind of at least one like true starter bullet to fire, card to play, if you will. But then beyond that, they're going to have to scrap, because they're have to win 2 games a day to get, to where they need to get tomorrow. They are going to have to cobble together a pitching performance as well. And the pressure is, you're right, Nicholas. He mentions the pressure on given their recent postseason failures. I think there's something to that. Yeah. I like kind of the makeup of that team, but yeah, I mean, they're human beings and the pressure is real. Wake Cincy first to 35. Sam, I think, see, there's the thing. When Sean gave me that over under 18.5 total runs, I was thinking about games like that could have a combined, jokes aside, they could combine for 30 runs. That wouldn't be crazy. So like, that's what I'm betting on, is that the numbers that go above that line go way above that line, and it kind of skews the average a little bit. I mean, Joey, it's a fair point. Like, Joey says, Wake scares me more. I mean, the talent, from a talent standpoint, I get it, but it's just like at this stage, you have to do the fundamental stuff well. And I guess there's a scenario where like Wake just finds a guy who's just feeling it, and they've got good stuff on the mound. They've got power bats. So I do get it, but this just kind of is who Wake is this year. I mean, there's a reason why, even with all that talent, they were a 2 seed and never really pushed to be more than that. They were always just kind of like a team that we had them in and out of the top 25 a few times. Feels like they're somewhere between the, 20th and 35th best team in the country. They just never really found another gear. And so, I just kind of think they are who they are. Mandy Chris asked about a couple of coaching questions with Corbin. Not bunting Vastin in 2 places was wild. Not sending a pinch runner in the 9th to try to force something. Yeah, I mean, those certainly can be critiqued. I guess I would just say it was like you were just 1 hit away for so much of that game. To me, yes, there is room to criticize some things, but also you just got to get a big hit. I mean, that sounds simplistic, but that's kind of the long and the short of it. As Coach Corbin put it last night, not looking for ancillary BS. That was his quote. Although he used the full word, ancillary BS to explain it. It's just they didn't get the big hit. Canes Cats Heat says straight propaganda. I don't know if he's referring to me, but come on, Canes Cats Heat. You're around here enough to know. You're in the comments all the time. We give love to Miami. Miami's playing great. And we call it like it is. I hope you don't see it as propaganda. But you're entitled to your opinion. Nicholas Wilson says, can Murray State pull off the Cinderella run to Omaha? I mean, based on what we've seen, I really worried about their pitching last night against Georgia Tech. And I mean, it didn't go great. They gave up 11 runs, but if they're just going to score bare minimum 10 runs a game, then you don't need to pitch that well, right? So I don't know if they can get to Omaha because like they're gonna be matched up with a tough super regional, right? I mean, I think they're opposite Athens. Yeah, because it would have been Georgia Tech, Georgia, if Georgia Tech comes through it. But so whether that's Duke or Georgia comes back through it, Murray State's obviously going to be on the road again. Evansville played well in Knoxville last year, and that's another Missouri Valley team. So it could be done. I ultimately wouldn't bet on it, but man, if their offense is swinging it like that, they're going to have a chance to do anything. I will ask. Sure, I will ask Aaron about the Wake Forest pitching lab. I will. Oh, I see. Okay, you're talking about the propaganda. Okay, the propaganda was the Wake Forest pitching lab in the opinion of Canes Cats Heat 305. By the way, congrats to your Ice Cats, Canes Cats Heats, back in the Stanley Cup Finals against Edmonton. Randy Peterson says, War Eagle, Ike doing Ike things as always. Yeah, man. Impressive offensive performance last night for Auburn just to kind of keep coming. That Stetson team is, as wrestling announcer Jim Ross from my youth used to say, tougher than a $2 steak. Like that is kind of what Stetson has proven to be. And so Auburn kept having to punch. And Ike did. Had a good game, had a monster home run to left field. Cooper McMurray had 3 doubles in the game. Bub Terrell had a big hit late in the game. They played well. UNC and Arkansas both look like they should be favorites to go all the way. I'd agree with you on those. Vandy Chris asks, when do Clay Vanderlaan, that's Houston Christians head coach, and Kane Sweeney get bigger jobs? Those guys are a little bit further down the line. I would say both coaches that I know. It's Kane Sweeney, not Cade. I don't know if that's a typo or just not sure of the name there, but to me, those are both too new. First-year head coaches in both places. So, could they hop up to like a maybe slightly bigger job? Perhaps. But to really get them in the mix for bigger stuff, they just need to build on this. And I know Kane Sweeney better of the two because I've USC Upstate's not far from me. I've been to games there. I've talked to him, and he coached under Mike McGuire for a long time. That had a lot of success there. So I am optimistic that they will continue to have success at Upstate, and he will have his opportunities. Just feels a little bit early. Ace Man says this about Texas. Grubbs, Burns, and Volantis all have pitched already and wouldn't be surprised to see all 3 make appearances over the next 3 games. I think that's probably a fair assessment, just given where Texas is at. The Horns pitching depth will catch up to them eventually. You would think, but they've been finding ways all year. But it will be fun to watch them try because they're going to really have to figure it out. Nicholas Wilson says, need to see some upsets today. Omaha's a lot more fun when it's a bunch of Cinderellas. I would say, generally speaking, I'm with you in that I like to see variety in the Omaha field. I don't want it to be a bunch of Cinderellas, but I do like 1 or 2 just to give us a little bit of a different flavor in Omaha. I'm down for that. Baton Rouge Raven says, most impressive team through 2 days. LSU was great, but lesser competition than other regionals. They're on the list. Arkansas, certainly. I guess you could nitpick and say, well, is Creighton Creighton versus DBU? Fair, but you can only play the team in front of you. It's not an SEC team, but like Duke, really impressive. Like this kind of is what Duke does when they get to regionals. They tend to play well. So they've been impressive to me. So yeah, LSU hasn't played great competition, but they're dominating, teams. And at this stage of the game, like everybody's, I said this yesterday, everybody's good or hot or both. So every win's a good win this stage of the game. Randy Peterson says, "What about Dutton fired up with the home plate umpire?" Yeah, Sam Dutton, was fired up. Some close calls. I had TrackMan up, by the way, and the home plate umpire, like at least in terms of now, consistency is a different thing, but at least in terms of what he would call, was mostly right. But they were borderline pitches. There for like the 1/2 inning in particular, Dutton had like 5 pitches in a row that were just like right on the edges of the strike zone that could have gone either way, and they seemed to all go not his way. And Butch Thompson made an interesting point in postgame about how the improved atmosphere at Plainsman Park, and they had 7,500 people there last night, has made it to where like he and his coaches and his pitchers don't have to do as much politicking to the umpires because they feel like the crowd gets on them and kind of does that work for them. Now, he said that with a smile. I don't think he's being totally literal, but I do think his point is well taken, where it's like, it's now an atmosphere you can trust that like those fans are going to be engaged, they're going to be loud, and they're going to get on an umpire when they feel like the strike zone hasn't been consistent or particularly good. Tell me who's winning the Chapel Hill Regional and why is it Nebraska? I doubt it, but man, that would be a fun next couple of days if Nebraska is able to come all the way through that, especially given that they've now got to beat Oklahoma and then UNC twice. That would be one heck of a run. Sean says to the Baton Rouge Raven question, UCLA. Yeah, actually UCLA has been really good. That's a good answer there. All right, scrolling, see if there's anything else in here. Yeah, Nicholas brings up credit to Butch Thompson. He rebuilt that thing after the bad 2024. Yeah, and it's a fairly similar. It's not. They do have some additions, the freshmen in particular, right, and Dutton, but it's a lot of the same guys too. So that's part of what's impressive is that they didn't. It's not like they totally rebuilt that roster. They did some rebuilding, but it's more that they're just better this year. Joey says, do roster limits next year make everybody's pitching situations worse, or will better players trickle down to the mid-majors and we might see even more upsets? I think it's more the latter. I ultimately don't think it's going to be a total game changer because I still think that some players are going to want to push themselves and end up on SEC rosters who shouldn't end up on SEC rosters, and it might take some time for that to filter down. But and there's only so many players that are going to make those moves. But so I do think it might create even more upsets. I do think it could spread the talent out a little more. Now, the counterbalance to that is, as players who might have been the 38th man on an SEC roster filter down to whatever the next level is, Sun Belt and American, CUSA, whatever. At the same time, let's say there are teams out there that maybe not right away, but in the near future, and not just SEC teams, but like Clemson is going to be funding their program at a really, really high level. There are probably also some players who are at the Sun Belt level, who might have options like to transfer up or stay with their team or what have you. And if there's a small subset of teams that are doing a better job funding than others, whether it's, the scholarship piece or the NIL piece, however that ends up looking in the future, it's so murky right now. I do think there will also be some winnowing too, because there are certain teams that I think are going to have advantages in that regard. So yes and no. All right. Last question I will, before we get to the results here, we'll run through them real quick. Your thoughts on O'Connor to Mississippi State, is that going to work? I think so. Yeah, I mean, but I think I have two thoughts. One is that I really do think it's going to work. I don't think Brian O'Connor, what he's doing is specific to Virginia, because you look at the rosters and it's teams that would win in the SEC, right? You don't get to Omaha by accident. Like, yes, some paths are easier than others, but they've been to Omaha a whole bunch. And if you just put Mississippi State uniforms on those teams, it's no different. So I do think it's going to work, but I think it's important, and this is not because I don't have an answer here, but Mississippi State's going to have to answer it for themselves. How do you define work? Like, as in, will it work? And then have a realistic version of what that is, and then go from there. Again, I'm not making a judgment on that. That probably sounds like me saying, hey, you got to cut him a break and be more lenient. It's not necessarily what I'm saying, but I do think it needs to be defined what making it work is. But I think he's going to be great. So just, look at what Virginia baseball was before he got there. Look at what it is now. I don't think what he did is just a one and done. All right, let's get to some results real quick, and then we'll get you guys out of here. Mentioned earlier, Bama 0-2. They lost to Southern Miss in an elimination game, second straight year 0-2 as a 2 seed. Alabama fans, including some on the show, not thrilled about that, and I get it. We'll see where Alabama goes from here. Certainly, assuming Justin LeBron back in the fold, they're going to have one heck of a roster centerpiece to build around, but they will have to do some building with some of the guys they're going to lose to the draft. Duke 6, Georgia 3. There was an early 3-run homer for Duke in that game. Georgia really wasn't able to overcome that in the end. They've got Oklahoma State today, does Georgia, in an elimination game. Tough in part because look at Oklahoma State. That's obviously a proud program. But they've also got Harrison Bodendorf on the mound. That's their best starter. So that's a tough draw for Georgia to end up with there. UNC 11, Oklahoma 5. UNC was all over Kyson Witherspoon in a way that no one else really has been this season. Oklahoma couldn't dig its way out. They've got Nebraska. Still in good shape is Oklahoma on the mound, relatively speaking. They still got Cade Crossland ready to go. You trust him to give you a chance to win that game. But should be a fun elimination game there with Nebraska. It's a football matchup there for the second time in 3 days. UTSA 9, Texas 7. We talked about that. Texas was up 6-1 in the top of the fifth and couldn't finish it. They have Kansas State in the elimination game, former Big 12 foe, Kansas State. Kansas State didn't really play, hadn't played great the first couple games of this regional. They took care of business yesterday against Houston Christian, but they really weren't all that competitive against UTSA the day before. So it's hard to imagine them flipping a switch, but they are talented. So, if they come out and give Texas a run, I wouldn't be shocked. But it's just hard to see that at least right this minute. Louisville 3, Vanderbilt 2. We've talked about this game quite a bit. Vanderbilt just couldn't get the big hit. They've got Wright State in an elimination game, a rematch of that wild opening day game. Florida State 10, Mississippi State 3. Haven't talked about this one quite as much as others. Jamie Arnold pitched well. Mississippi State got to him a little bit early, but as good pitchers do, Jamie Arnold kind of like compartmentalized that and threw up a few zeros to end his outing. Ends up with 7 innings pitched there. A 5-run fifth for Florida State was kind of the dagger in that game. Mississippi State has Northeastern. So the Northeastern beat Bethune-Cookman yesterday. It was not easy, but they got it done. First win for Northeastern in regionals in the Mike Glavin era. They were previously 0-7 in regionals under Mike Glavin. Kentucky 7, USC Upstate 3. They broke a 3-3 tie in the 6th to take a lead they would not relinquish for the second day in a row. USC Upstate was right there with a power conference team and just couldn't quite come all the way back. Kentucky and Clemson, a little bit of a blockbuster elimination game early in Clemson today. West Virginia awaiting the winner of that. Florida 17, Fairfield 2. Nice stress-free win for Florida, but, had to have it. 8 innings pitched for Aiden King, freshman there. Again, talk about things they had to have. Just a really long starting outing so that they can reset the pitching at least a little bit ahead of what could be a long day today. Ole Miss 8, Western Kentucky 6. Western Kentucky fought hard, including here in the 9th inning, but Ole Miss gets it done. 6 home runs for the Rebels, 2 each for Mitch Sanford, Judd Udermark, and Austin Foley. Ole Miss has Georgia Tech today. They've got a tough road in front of them. Murray State awaits again, but I will say, if Ole Miss can get past Georgia Tech, and that's no sure thing, obviously. Look, Murray State's played well. I'm not taking anything away from them, but if you just said beforehand you got to win 2 games and it's against the 4 seed in your regional, you're typically going to take that deal. And so there is a path there for Ole Miss, I would say. Winners bracket games: Auburn 8, Stetson 5. I talked about Auburn adding on. Sam Dutton, a gutsy performance. Ryan Hetzler was good in relief. They're waiting on the winner of NC State and Stetson tonight. LSU 12, DBU nothing. Cade Anderson, 7 innings, 11 strikeouts. Game really wasn't competitive at any point. They're awaiting the Little Rock DBU winner tonight. Arkansas 12, Creighton 1. 2 home runs each for Vahiva Aloy and Ryder Helfrich. 6 strong innings for Zach Root. They're awaiting the winner of Creighton and North Dakota State. North Dakota State upset Kansas. Good run for North Dakota State in this regional. Played well against Arkansas opening night and then beat Kansas yesterday. Tennessee 10, Cincinnati 6. Like I mentioned, running game really wasn't a huge factor for Cincinnati. They did a good job there. Gavin Keelan, 4 hits for the Vols. They're awaiting the winner of Cincinnati or Wake Forest tonight. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for your questions and your comments. I say it all the time, but I always want to make sure you guys hear it. That's my favorite part of the show, is that interaction with y'all. So I appreciate you continuing that, and makes it a lot of fun. I never know what we're going to get in the comments, and that's part of why I love it. All right, reminder, so this is the last show this weekend, but reminder, we will be back next weekend, Weekend Waypoints on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mark and I will also have a regional recap edition of Highway to Hoover in the middle of this week, let's call it. So plenty of content still coming your way from regional weekend. So, all right, folks, enjoy the baseball today. Should be beautiful, beautiful chaos. And I will talk to you again Friday morning to start super regionals next weekend. Believe it or not. Talk to y'all soon.